And we are live, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I will call to order the November 5th meeting of the City of Albuquerque Intergovernmental Legislative Relations Committee. Thank you, everybody, for being here this afternoon. I think our agenda is our typical agenda, and our first item is to hear from our state lobbyists, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Park. I'm not sure who would like to go first.
I'll go first, Madam.
Always go first.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, Thompson.
Hi, everybody. So I'm up in Santa Fe today. I just had a nice meeting with Callie Carswell, who's responsible for capital outlay for the state, for the legislature. And, you know, we had a very, very candid conversation about everything that's happening in DC, how that impacts everything, how that might affect capital outlay in an upcoming session, depending on what's going on. And she was very, very, I don't want to say she was certain, but she was very encouraged that there will be money for capital outlay, just because they have it and they recognize how important it is to keep projects moving. There's some interesting background things happen. Perhaps you've seen in the paper relative to like Department of Transportation, long-term funding needs, and that kind of those conversations. So those are interesting, but I would just say in general, like I'm expecting capital outlay to look very similar to how it's looked at least last year. And so I'll be working closely with Ms. Anaya and with Mr. Minicucci to make sure that everybody that needs to be prepared for how it's all going to roll out will be prepared.
And Madam Chair, let me just jump on a little bit of what Joe said. Is I was in Santa Fe earlier today as well. Had several legislative meetings earlier this week, and we're starting to hear that as a result of the prolonged government shutdown, that there may be a special session as early as Monday on SNAP benefits. The intention is it'll be a 1 day, half a day special session, limited exclusively to putting additional funding to ensure that SNAP recipients here in the state of New Mexico can be fully funded, at least for the foreseeable future. But I think that is going to happen. That has been sort of the scuttlebutt and the talk. I'm sure Joe's heard the same thing or similar things.
Yeah, November 10th is the date, Madam Chair, that I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's Monday. So they were looking at doing it a little later in the week, but you know, the scheduling of these things is really left up to the governor. But it's going to happen, and that should be the only thing that is on the agenda. It should be very, very limited. So that's the big news that we've been hearing out of Santa Fe in the last few days.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Park. Are there any questions from the committee regarding their reports from Santa Fe? Great. Thank you both. Appreciate the update. Next on our agenda is our update from our federal lobbyist, Mr. O'Donnell. I see you there. Great. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'll talk about two things. I'll try not to focus too much on shutdown and turn more attention to both the administration and the council's projects that look like they would be priorities for earmarks in FY27 and for grant funding in calendar year 2026. First on the shutdown, a lot of activity here today, a lot of it behind the scenes, some of it on the national news. So there was a meeting this morning at the White House with the president and Republican senators to talk about a lot of things. When the meeting was over, there were two things that came out of it. The president was still saying that he wants the Republican leadership in the Senate to get rid of the filibuster. And as Senator Thune, the majority leader, said after he left the White House, I know the numbers on this, and there are no numbers there to do away with the filibuster. I think there's also an optics problem here for the Republican leadership in the Senate, and that is however you choose to look at this or what you want to believe, the bottom line right now is there is a feeling in Washington that there's been a lot of executive branch um, leadership exerted on the House, on Speaker Johnson. I think the Republicans in the Senate do not want to be in the position of looking like the White House is giving them directions on how to run the Senate. So you've got, and I think this is probably a problem too on the House side for Speaker Johnson. There is that independence between the legislative and the executive branch, but there's been so much agreement on many issues that at times it looks like the White House is really directing congressional affairs, or at least can appear that way. And I think that's one of the things that House members and senators right now are concerned about. So there is no movement from the White House with the Democratic appeal for a meeting. There was a letter that went from Minority Leader Jeffries and Senator Schumer to the White House asking for a bipartisan meeting. I believe the president is on his way out of town this afternoon. So that won't happen. I think one of the things that is driving this towards an end is work that is going on behind the scenes. And we reported before that, and this gets into appropriations, that before the shutdown, there was talk of having a 3-bill appropriations package that might be, I don't know if it would have been put as part of a CR or that would be the CR plus. Those bills would be Ag, Milcon, Veterans Affairs, that's one bill, and legislative branch, which funds the Congress. The interesting part of that is that discussion is continuing to go on right now with some House appropriations folks and with Senate. I don't know that they're conferencing on this, but in that ag bill, you would wind up having the SNAP funding. It would be just for a year. There is a bipartisan group in the House, Republican members and Democratic members, talking about a framework for a 2-year agreement to fund the cost of the subsidies for Medicaid. It would be a 2-year agreement. Now, they haven't talked about how they would package that. On the Senate side, the shutdown, probably the silver lining to that cloud on the Senate side is it's giving the Senate an opportunity to finish their appropriations work on 7 other bills. So where this might position Congress once they can find an agreement, is that we may actually wind up with an appropriations bill and not a continuing resolution for 27. Both what I would call centrist Democrats and Republicans agree they do not want a continuing resolution for FY 27. That would be the second year in a row. And there are too many other programs that get funded that would fall under new project funding that don't get funded with a CR. So I think there's some pressure there for these informal groups on both sides of the hill that are trying to find a solution. And I think that's where this is going to come from. I think what you have is the White House and the leadership in the House and the Senate out in front talking about this, positioning. But I think what will happen is there will be a package that comes from some House members. I don't know if it'll be the same one that comes from some Senate members, but I think that is the way that they will find an off-ramp to this shutdown, is that there will be a package which basically everybody will have to swallow hard and accept some things they don't want. We'll see what those are, but I think that's what's going to drive it. And the other thing is we're coming up on what would have been the end of this CR that they can't agree to, which was November 21st. So we think before Thanksgiving, there could be an agreement, and it might be a short one that would take us to right before, maybe a week or so before Christmas. The thing that conservatives on both sides of the hill don't want to see happen is this run to a solution on Christmas Eve, which forces people to accept some things they would never accept. And I think the conservative members feel like they don't want to see that happen because too many things get stuck in at the last minute. So that may even augur, if they haven't gotten to an agreement by, say, 2 weeks before Christmas, that we go into the new year and hopefully get an appropriations bill. Now, that brings me to FY27. Because of the discussions that are going on in the Senate about wrapping up FY26, regardless of whether there's a CR or not, there is discussion about FY27 already. What's the process going to be? And you hear congressional staff, as I reported, I think in a memo I sent last week to both the administration and the council, there is talk from congressional staff informally that be ready to move on appropriations requests in mid-January, because that's when the guidance will come out from both the House and Senate Appropriations Committees to members. So we're going to have earmarks again because I think there is so much support for them. And as I've said on a couple of occasions, you haven't heard any of those stories about a bridge to nowhere, frankly, the past 5 years that we've had them. So I think we'll be doing that again. That is, I have taken a look at the council and the administration's papers on earmarks. The way I figure it, the administration has about 3 areas, maybe 15 project types. The council has about 6 program areas and about 14 earmarks. They're spread across housing, public safety, quality of life, economic development, transportation, and parks. I've looked at the list, and I, by the way, sent a list yesterday, which I think was distributed. It shows the 8 subcommittees that earmarks come from, and it lists the programs underneath each one of those that are the program accounts that are used to make those earmarks. I was telling Mr. Park and Mr. Mr. Parkinson and Mr. Menicucci in the last 2 days, when I saw this list, when we put it together, I thought to myself, this is exactly why the 2 senators say, send us all the projects that you have an interest in, because this list is used by them to match all of the projects that you send in and sift through them to see where there are some opportunities for them to go after earmarks on your behalf. So, and they can do that because they have a big list, and it's a long list of federal program accounts. Madam Chair, that's the extent of my report. I'm glad to take any questions the committee might have.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. I think this list is incredibly helpful, so thank you for sending that over. I think it adds some clarity for everyone in terms of each of those committees and their subcommittees. So thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. O'Donnell?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I do have one more comment about SNAP and about Medicaid,
Thank you.
because they're at the center of this discussion. In Bernalillo County, and you folks probably know this, but I was looking at this today. In Bernalillo County in Albuquerque, you have about 150,000 people as of October 25th that get SNAP benefits. In the state, I think it is 450 or 455,000. On Medicaid in the county, there are 221,000 recipients as of August 25th. And in the state, there is 697,000 plus. The reason I mention this is because when I did talk with Joe Thompson this week, one of the comments or one of the thoughts that we exchanged was to the degree that the state can fund SNAP and help with Medicaid during this shutdown. And I'm not surprised to hear that maybe there's going to be a special session for SNAP funding because this money will be eaten up very quickly in the state. And I should say that Senator Lujan, and I included this in some information I said, I think also with the link to the press conference that he introduced a bill last week, but the majority on the Ag Committee have prevented it from being actually given a number and introduced before the committee, but it's on SNAP funding. And Senator Hawley from Missouri, who also has a big Medicaid and SNAP constituency in his state, also introduced a bill on paying SNAP benefits immediately. I just wanted to mention those before I closed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. With that extra information, is there any other questions for Mr. O'Donnell? Okay, thank you very much for that information. I know that we're all top of mind thinking about the folks that are impacted in New Mexico and in Albuquerque. The next item on our agenda is to review the recommendations for federal priorities. Review the recommendation to full council for the administration's federal priorities. I think Mr. Parkinson, you're going to go over this with us.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just our version of our what would be FY27 layout for everything federal. That includes both all of our grant and earmark type funding priorities, as well as at the end a list of policy priorities that the administration would like to see enacted by our delegation. And I'm open to any questions, and that's this, it's a good read. So just let me know if we have any questions. I stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Parkinson. Our action for this committee is for us to send forward for recommendation for note be received to City Council, I believe. I would ask that we accept a motion for us to send this forward with allowing for any amendments we may need to make between now and full council meeting. If there are any changes for our final product to go to City Council. As I think Councilor Grout will send it next meeting to meet our ordinance requirements.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion of any sort? Great. All those in favor, please raise your hand and aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is to review the recommendation from this committee for full council, the City Council's federal request. And I think Mr. Menicucci, you're leading on this for us.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the ITR. Primarily, I think what Mr. O'Donnell described when he described his analysis of the council's request, did a fairly good job of doing it, or did a good job of describing it. We have actually 19 requests. Many of them are repeat requests from last year because the last 2 years there's been issues with earmarks getting funded due to the continuing resolutions. There are a few new ones in there, and I think such as I believe it's Central Avenue, it's the City Council District 6 Financial Empowerment Center is one that stands out. I believe there are 1 or 2 more new ones in the Eubank, District 9 Eubank Want to Boat Traffic Safety Corridor. Many of the others are all brand new. They are by council district. There is one that was a repeat of last year that is multiple council districts. That's renovate and expand the Albuquerque Regional Shooting Range Park. That comes from 5 different council districts. There, unlike last year we did not have any policy initiatives. This year there are policy initiatives. They were submitted by District 6, and primarily they do with addressing issues in District 6, such as housing and behavioral health and substance abuse. They also call for supporting 2 bills that Mr. O'Donnell brought to our attention, or to the IGR's attention. That was to adopt the Transit Funding Flexibility Act. That would give restore back to mid-sized transit agencies such as Albuquerque Ride, their ability to use their current federal funds, which are primarily 5307 funds, that instead of just using them for capital, they could also once again use them for operations. They lost that ability to use them back in the mid-1990s. That would be restored. And then also funding for the housing and adopting the Renewing Opportunity in the American Dream Road to Housing Act. That's a comprehensive act to update the federal government's housing legislation. It's a bipartisan act and has a whole suite of recommendations to address housing affordability. And that is primarily the report. If there's any questions, although Mr. O'Donnell has his hand up, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Minicucci. Mr. O'Donnell, do you have a question? You're on mute, Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to respond or amplify on something that Mr. Minicucci said. Those 4 things that he mentioned, I don't know if he mentioned the SNAP legislation that Senator Lujan had introduced, but on the road to housing, the FEMA reform, and the transit for mid-size operators, I drafted letters that the city could send to the delegation regarding those. And the reason that I say these are letters that I think the city should send is because of the housing issues always being a priority, as we know they are for the city. With FEMA, I think because of your location and the importance of the city and public safety, you should weigh in on the FEMA reform. And on the transit one, because if you're a transit operator and the city's ownership of that, I think you should weigh in because that's going to be part of the surface transportation reauthorization bills. So I'm glad to follow up with anybody, the council, the mayor's office on these, but I do think I really want to say that you should weigh in with the congressional delegation on these. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. I think it's on our radar, and so I appreciate you coordinating with Mr. Parkinson and Mr. Minicucci. I do believe the departments are intending in both cases, and that I think we will happily work with you, your insight to do so. So thank you for bringing our attention to that.
Thank you.
If there's no other discussion, we'll have the same motion we had last, which is to send this forward to full city council consideration, allowing for any amendments or edits that may need to be made before that, before being considered at council.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? There's seen no discussion. All those in favor, aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you all very much. Okay. Somehow I've lost my agenda. There we go. Next up, we have the review and approval of our 2026 IGR calendar. Mr. Minicucci, do you have that to present to on the screen?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr.
So basically, Madam Chair, members of the committee, every year the committee approves a calendar. The format that you all use is to meet at 3 p.m. on the first Wednesday of the month. That is in this calendar for 2026. Also to add have many more meetings or numerous meetings during the legislative session, at least scheduled, although many of them are not held. They're there in case the lobbyists or the members of the committee identify some need to meet. and the committee and the chair can call the committee together with the meetings having been published per state law for notification. This year, what's recommended is that we do have a meeting right before the session. That'll be the week. We'll start out the year with the January 7th, the regularly scheduled meeting, then have a meeting scheduled right the next Wednesday, which will be just a few days before the session. Then there will be one right after when the session starts. And then for the first couple of weeks, it would be there'd be one on Wednesday and Friday. I think it'd be Wednesday and Friday of that month of that week. And then for the final day of the final session or the final week, it would go to every day. That's a little bit less than what we had last year, because last year the beginning weeks really didn't have too much of a need to call for every day. So it was scaled back to just twice. I'm sorry, it would be twice a week. It'd be Wednesdays and Saturdays. And the Saturday meetings would be at 10 a.m. On that one. So if there are, and then from there forward after the session, the calendar goes back to the first Wednesday of every month at 3 p.m. If there are any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Manacucci. The calendar, it looks correct. I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson, do you have an idea?
Sorry, Madam Chair. Mr. Manacucci, so you may have said this, I know you kind of went through quickly and I was looking. January 20th, should that be the 21st?
Yeah, that should be the 21st.
I was just trying to do a quick calendar check.
Yeah, that would be the 21st. We'll do that. We'll check that.
Thank you. With that, we'll make that one change to it. Any other items? If you want to have any other? I want to just confirm, I think that this is a good practice for us to go ahead and have on the calendar the published additional meetings during the session so that we have the ability to hold them if we need them. And just to remind the public that we make the decision based upon agenda items that are needed to be discussed. And if they are not necessary, we do cancel those meetings in advance. It may be day of, but it will be in advance.
I move
Great.
to approve this.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Okay.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Great. Thank you all very much. It was a productive meeting. I appreciate everyone's updates. It's very helpful. Is there any other business for the committee today? Great. Seeing none. Thank you all. We will adjourn and we'll see City Council and staff in a few hours. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.